I want to welcome everyone here today. I am your moderator and your president, Xtavia Bailey. Would you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. I do want to recognize a few people as we start. We have Commissioner Kevin Van Ostrovitz. He's District 3 County Commissioner. And we have Ms. Mary Ann Barnaby. That is our Bradenton City Council, Ward 2. Now, let me look on this side and make sure I'm good. Okay. And then I would like to offer congratulations to Mr. Jason Bearden. He has won his primary for County Commission at Large. Is that District 6? Congratulations. And we also have our very own board member, Mr. Mike Ron. He also won his primary for District 4 Manatee County Commission. Congratulations. Anyone who steps up or puts themselves in the limelight or in the firing squad to run for election, it's not easy. We do have a couple people. I usually don't announce candidates, so I'm not doing that on purpose. But I really want to make sure that we understand that. Thank you all for going out and voting and making your decisions on Tuesday, and we appreciate you. And we appreciate everyone and all of our sitting elected officials that are doing the job. We thank you so much. Do we have anyone in the audience that has served in the military? We would just like to recognize you really quick. Please stand. Please stand. All of our military. We thank you so much for your service. Now I'm going to ask if you would please silence your cell phones. And this time I did cut mine off. Our topic today is whose right is it anyway? This is a very important topic, whether it makes us uncomfortable or not. But talking about abortion is what we've been talking about all over the United States. And our speakers today, let me just go ahead and explain to you what they're going to be addressing. So we have Johnny Chris. He is a political analyst. He is gone viral on TikTok, like millions of views, because he really dissects things differently. Johnny is going to be talking as a father, the father's right. Ooh. And how he's been in a relationship and someone has decided to have an abortion without his knowledge. So he's going to give you some insight from that. Representative Tommy Gregory is going to give you insight from the actual House. He's going to give you the legislation. He's going to actually give you the law. So we're going to understand the perspective from the father's rights, but we're also going to understand what Florida has decided to do. Then we have Elena Martinez. She's also an advocate for many things homeless in our communities, and she's an advocate for standing up for what she believes in. But her perspective today is going to be, I am a single young mother. I had to make a decision, and I am pro-choice because why would I want to be with a man who hits me and then bring this young baby into the world? So she's going to give her perspective. And then we have Miss Sarah Parker. If you don't know Sarah Parker, you're going to know her now. Sarah is not afraid to stand up for what she believes in, and she's representing pro-choice, and that is it. So we're going to hear the perspectives from our different speakers, and I'm just excited to get this going. I'm going to give you a little background about Sarah Parker. Sarah Parker was raised in Bible Belt of America at the age of 17. She began her activism during the Occupy movement in South Carolina. Now she is 29 years old with 2 children. She currently resides in Sarasota, Florida, where she's on the leadership board of Black Lives Matter in Minnesota and the president of Women Voices of SWFL. She also is the co-founder of a new political consulting company. Please welcome Sarah Parker.
All right, I'm a little tall, so I'm about justice, definitely with heels on. Hi, my name is Sarah Parker. I'm a local activist, and I am the president of Women's Voices of Southwest Florida. I would like to first thank Xtavia and Tiger Bay for providing a forum that we can all come together and have a hard conversation and still be in the same room. This is very important. America is so divided. We need more conversations like this, no matter what side you're on. What I'm going to do as we discuss women's bodily autonomies or people's bodily autonomies, I'm going to hit you with facts. And I want to stay on the facts because there's a lot of emotion on both sides. Women's Voices of Southwest Florida was founded by my best friend, Caitlin Danny Sammons. We were founded when Manatee County tried to do an abortion ban, a 6-week abortion ban, when someone came from out of state and came to our local government and asked them to do something against their constituents' will. Thankfully, Attorney General Ashley Moody stopped that in its tracks. We then went to Tallahassee, and we fought against the 15-week abortion ban. I know you've seen me in situations where I have a megaphone and I'm yelling, or have you seen me on the news and I'm talking fast? I'm passionate. A wise man today reminded me of a Martin Luther King quote. People are usually upset, confused, or hurt. They're never actually angry. Anger is not real. They're actually there's one of those two. I'm hurt. As a child that was born in New York and then raised in the Bible Belt, as someone that went to church 3 times a week, as someone that said the Pledge of Allegiance every single day with pride in my heart, because I know the generations before me didn't have these opportunities. To see us go backwards is very scary, and it will do nothing but hurt. According to the Guttmacher Institute, the number of illegal abortions in the 1950s and the 1960s ranged from 200,000 to 1.2 million. One analysis in North Carolina, the estimated was 800,000 illegal or self-induced abortions. In the 1930s, abortion was listed as the official cause of death for almost 2,700 women. That is your pre-Roe statistics. I believe if we want to lower abortion, there's tons of ways to do it. Florida is an opt-in, not an opt-out sexual ed state. Meaning when your kids go to school, you have to opt them into sex ed, not opt them out. I believe you have a right to tell your child what they can and can't learn. I believe that in the bottom of my heart. However, there are parents that might not be as involved as the rest of us are in here. There are parents that might not be teaching their children sexual education, or if you even want to go, their abstinence. There are parents that don't talk about what happens to a woman's body as they get older. We have to make sure they have that education. If we look at what happened in Colorado, Colorado lowered abortion immensely by providing that education, by providing free birth control. And that was from a donation from a single donor. And then what happened was that the actual money that was taken from the state government to give reproductive health care, so to give maternal health care, all of that money paid for itself. So the whole institute wound up paying for itself. And I think that instead of investing in lawsuits that you know you're going to get, instead of investing in having police monitor protests, you can invest in our child's futures. Last week, in a very real world of the US without Roe, a Louisiana woman was forced to remain pregnant with a headless, non-viable fetus. Before her, another Louisiana woman was forced to give birth to a non-viable fetus. Last week, a Republican lawmaker from the beautiful state of South Carolina, because that's where I grew up, testified about how an abortion ban he voted for resulted in a 19-year-old being denied medical necessary abortion care after losing a pregnancy, likely resulting in her losing her uterus and possibly contracting sepsis and dying. Last Thursday, 2-hour-old infant was found in the bushes near Interstate 35 in Texas. We don't have foster care. We don't have mental health. We're not educating our children. Instead, we're going to say, you are forced to be a mother now. And then we're going to complain that they're living off of the system. Then we're going to complain that these children are going around committing crimes. Then we're going to complain. We need change in Florida. We don't need to go backwards. We need to go forwards. We need to make sure that women, Black women specifically, have good maternal health rates. We need to make sure women and children have education, have an opportunity. We don't even have affordable housing, and we're forcing people to have children. Thank you.
Right on time, Sarah. Look at you. That's good. Thank you so much, Sarah, again. I appreciate you. Next, we'll have up Representative Tommy Gregory. Tommy Gregory is the represents District 73 in Florida House Representatives, covering portions of Manatee County and Sarasota. He is a native Floridian. Please welcome Tommy Gregory.
Thank you, Octavia. I asked her to keep that bio short because last time you embarrassed me tremendously with a lengthy bio. And most of the people in the room have heard it before. But the important thing is that I'm a representative of the people. And as Sarah said, I think it's so important that we come together and listen to different viewpoints in a very peaceful but appropriate debate and discussion. So I appreciate the tone that you set from the very beginning. You know, I'd like to say something that I hope is not controversial. I certainly don't intend it to be. But to start, I will say that all of us, everyone in this room is pro-life. I don't doubt that for a moment that all of you are pro-life. You are loving parents or loving siblings, loving children, nieces and nephews. You do things that we do as Floridians and Americans and just people. You celebrate the birth of a child. You celebrate the birthdays as they pass year by year. You go to bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs. You cry at funerals. You protest when you believe there's been an injustice, or somebody dies in police custody and you don't feel it's appropriate. You think it's murder, you protest because you mourn that loss of life. We're all pro-life. But abortion presents a unique problem, both in size and scope, across this country and across this state. You see, if you don't know it, abortion is the leading cause of death in this country. Abortion, not heart disease, not cancer, not obesity, not diabetes, not car accidents, not murder. It's abortion by nearly 40%, greater numbers than whatever the second leading cause of death is, and I think it's heart disease, even COVID. And you know, another way that you demonstrate that you're pro-life and that you mourn that death, if you've been to Washington, D.C. in the last year or two, you will see a very moving tribute to those that we lost to COVID in the form of white crosses across the grass fields, because we miss them. We didn't want them to die. They did die of an illness because we're pro-life. It's a reason we go and visit our loved ones that we've lost. The reason that you can go to the National Cemetery in Sarasota County and be so moved by the veterans that gave their life to protect your freedoms. But abortion is unique in its size and scope because of its numbers. And let me tell you that in America, let's start off just talking about the statistics for what are Americans' actual views when you poll them, and they're consistent. They may vary a couple points up or down as this gets more attention politically, but here's the statistics. Nearly 50%, sometimes more, sometimes less, of Americans oppose abortions after 6 weeks. 70% oppose after 15 weeks. 90% oppose late-term abortions after 6 months. Florida law, and Octavia asked me to talk about Florida law, so let me talk about it. Before last year in Florida, you were essentially prohibited from late-term abortions, but there were exceptions for the life and health of the mother. Now, after last year, you're prohibited after 15 weeks. Up to 15 weeks, almost 4 months, abortions are legal in Florida. Tragically so, in my opinion, but they're legal in Florida for any reason or no reason. But after 15 weeks, the same exceptions remain in Florida law that were always there. And as I said, it's a policy that's supported by 70% of Americans and Floridians. Now, that is not reason enough to vote for it, right? I don't think that people should vote for or against something based on the polling. They should vote for or against this policy based on what they believed to be true, and what they told the people when they were running for office how they would vote. And I made it very clear that I was pro-life, that I believe an unborn baby is exactly that, a baby, a human life. And while there are certainly problems that we need to address, and that we do address at the city, county, state, and national level, threats to human life and dignity that we must address, and we do address. Can we do more? Should we do more? Of course, the government should always look at these issues and do what we can, but we cannot ignore the fact that it's a human life. And I don't think whether a child is going to be born into difficult socioeconomic status is a justification to kill them, either before or after birth. Nobody would argue after birth. It's only a question of whether or not, as a country, we can come to an agreement on what an unborn baby is. And if an unborn baby is a human life, then I think there's only one conclusion. So, contrary to Sarah's comments that we're going backwards, I'd say we're going forward. We are responding to the advances we've made in science, our ability now to see into the womb and confirm with our own eyes what doctors and scientists already knew, that it is indeed a human life, and the state has a responsibility and a duty to defend all human life. So I'm proud of the vote that I took. I was proud to co-sponsor that bill, and I look forward to your questions today.
Thank you so much, Representative Tommy Gregory. Next, we will have Elena Martinez. Elena Martinez is the Leaders' Rights Organization, which is a grassroots movement dedicated to providing to the needs of our community and globally. The Leaders' Rights Organization provided no-cost meals for those in need. This is one thing that she has really worked on. She partners with Feeding America. There are over 53,000 people struggling with food insecurities. But today, she's going to speak about her experience and relay to you what it is to have to make that decision. Please welcome Elena Martinez.
I'm a little shorter. So as she introduced me, my name is Elena Martinez. I am the founder of the Leaders' Rights Organization. But today, again, I am here from a mother's perspective and my own personal experience. So please bear with me. I'm going to be reading a lot of it to try to avoid the emotional side of it. So, I am a mother of 3 children. Early into their births, unforeseen issues arose. In spite of how wholesome of an environment in my home I created, my children still battled mental health conditions, while my other child developed health impairments that almost took his life from us. The thought of losing him baffled me. In spite of all that we faced, it made it apparent to me how detrimental the choice can be for a woman to have the right to choose what task their life will bear. It also made me aware of the choice that I made to be pro-choice, which for me is the only choice. Without termination of pregnancies, my life, as well as the child that I terminated, would be at risk. Although that was a hard decision, it had to happen. I was in an emotionally abusive relationship that eventually turned into a physically abusive relationship. I endured things that are unspeakable. And many women, like myself, have gone through this same thing, but they're not in my shoes. They're not standing here today. You gotta unlock it. Oh, sorry. I am the mother who has gone to countless doctor's appointments for mental health for my children. I am also the mother that chose to have an abortion. My choice to terminate my pregnancy was for myself, for my family, and for this unborn child. It's my duty, it's my job to protect everything that comes from me. And I made a choice that I stand by. The conscious decision to conceive or to terminate or to even carry out an adoption of a child is a choice that's made out of love and necessity in those scenarios. In the same way, the final moments of life choice is given at bedside to families on life support. The unfortunate position I was placed in to have to make this choice forced me to see that pro-choice is the only choice. There are many women and people that experience this. It's not up to, or it should not be up to, the government to decide that my story is enough reason for me to be able to have an abortion, for me to be able to make the right choice for myself, for my family. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elena, for sharing your story. Next, we're going to have Johnny Christ up. As I told you, he is a political analyst in his own right who has gone viral on the social medias, and he really has a different perspective. But today, he's going to talk about the father's perspective. Please give him a round of applause as he comes. I like his suit also. You like his suit, guys?
Thank you so much, everybody, for coming out. Hi, I represent the silent majority. I represent the person for the better part of my life when it comes to the topic of abortion. I've been told to sit down, shut up, you don't have a spot at this table. Why? Why do I not have a spot at my table? That's partly my child in there now, isn't it? If left to its natural devices, and my baby mother decided to leave me, I'd be on the hook. I would have to pay child support. I would have to pay insurance. I would be responsible if that child did something that is against the law if they're under the age of 18. But yet abortion, fathers are told, sit this one out. Why? Again, you can ask and answer yourself that own very question. I sympathize with any person who's been taken advantage of, the victim of domestic abuse. I sympathize. As somebody who was raised by a single mother, I will always and forever have a soft spot for single mothers. But I'm not going to talk about that today. I'm going to talk about the time I was robbed. And I use that word because the woman that I had dated, we did what probably a lot of people in this room have done. Went out, had a great night, maybe had one too many. Needless to say, I get the phone call probably about 6 months afterwards and said, hey, your ex, for all intents and purposes, we won't mention the name, she was pregnant. I was ecstatic. As a current father, I'm a huge girl dad. I love being a father. There's nothing greater to me. But when I said was, I was told, yes, she decided to have an abortion and not tell you. It was only by her sister that I even found out. When I confronted her about it, I was told the very popular talking points. Well, it's not your body now, is it? Well, correct. I agree 100%. That woman's body is not mine to control. But what's inside of her is half of mine. And I didn't even get a say-so. I didn't get anything. I didn't get a yes, no, up yours, none of it. I got told to sit down and shut up. Why? I sympathize. I'll never understand what it's like for a woman to physically have to go through that excruciating experience. But I do know what it's like to be the father who had their experience ripped away from them. Thank you.
Everyone's moving on time today. It's messing me up a little bit. Thank you so much for your introductions, guys. Now we're going to go to questions. We do want to start the first question out, but if you do have a question, please come to the microphone. If you have a question, please come to the microphone. We want to start the question off for Tommy Gregory. Do you feel that the legislation has covered everything that has been spoken today? And do you still feel that the 15 weeks is enough time for a mother to make a decision?
Well, first, the debate continues, right? This isn't a closed issue in Florida or around the state. I think what we're seeing now since the Dobbs decision is democracy in action. What we should have seen if we didn't have an activist court decide to make law in Roe v. Wade. What we are seeing across this country is government and your elected officials debating these issues, analyzing the policies, hearing from all sides, and making a decision. Naturally, they're coming to different decisions in different states, and that's okay. The point is that it's representative democracy in action. Your elected leaders are doing what they should be doing. Now, whether or not I think 15 weeks is enough time is really answered by the statistics. And the fact is that 95% of abortions in Florida occur in the first trimester already. That's just statistical fact, 95%. So it is certainly plenty of time. It's nearly 15 weeks is nearly 4 months. So it's even a little longer. It's outside the first trimester. So it's certainly plenty of time. So 95%. You know, there's another interesting number that I didn't tell you earlier that I will, which just really, frankly, broke my heart when I figured it out. And that is, you know, there are just over 200,000 babies born in Florida every year, which means that 1/4 of the pregnancies in Florida are terminated by abortion. And I think we need to think about that and let that sink in. And you can answer the question silently in your own heart and in your own mind as to whether or not there's more work to do.
Thank you so much. Do anyone on the panel? Go ahead, you may go.
Is it okay? It's on now. I wanted to make sure you told me about the mute button. I'm going to say that no, it does nothing. See, people are going to have abortions no matter what. They're going to. We look at post-Roe, we see that. What we need is long reactive birth control, free contraception, education. In that bill that I got to read myself over and over again in Tallahassee, the abortion ban is about a paragraph long. And in the rest of that bill, it does nothing but research what we've been telling you. Black women, the maternal rate, for the death that happens with black women, or the death that happens with the maternal rate, is horrible. It's scary. We take black women and we take poor white women, because those are the two statistics that are closest to each other, and it's still extremely high. This does nothing. This just ends safe, legal, accessible abortion.
Anyone on the panel want to go ahead, Johnny?
My question to you is that you think by making it widely available that people aren't still going to conduct dirty work? Like, at what point in time are we going to be real with ourselves about this? You want to make a legitimate argument about time frame? Well, there is none. Why? Because what I feel is different than what Mr. Gregory feels, what everybody feels. At the end of the day, it's either a human life, which is proven by conception, because all other data is completely ridiculous to try to refute, because you have things like unconsciousness and so forth. So if you want to make an argument that we should start holding doctors more accountable, like in the case of rape victims who go to Planned Parenthood, absolutely. Must have a police report filed. Stop that from happening, And I think you're going to have less abortions if you're willing to hold the negative people, because that's what everybody likes to sort, all 1% of it. You hold them accountable, per the other side, we'll see the numbers go down.
Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. 15 weeks is not enough time frame. There's a lot of different things that people aren't taking into account. Most recently, I had this conversation in the car today. We were discussing how with some women with the COVID vaccination, how it did delay their menstrual. And some women were weeks and weeks and weeks. Even myself was almost a month late. I was in panic mode. But that's a real thing. And there are a lot of women that do have abnormal menstrual cycles, as myself, and can go months without having a menstrual. So 15 weeks is not enough. I don't think that there should be a time frame at all. The thought process that it takes for a woman to have to decide if she's going to keep or to terminate a pregnancy can't be limited to any amount of time from my perspective at all. There are different things that happen. She may have, a business or life or different things that have led her to that decision. Or maybe she's hoping, as most people do in my situation with abuse, that things will get better. And then as you continue to go on, you see that things don't get better. So if it's past that week time frame, I'm not entitled to make a decision for myself and my family. I think that's absurd. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jane Filestaker, and I'm a member. My question is mostly for Representative Gregory. I come from a little bit of a different point of view and looking at this issue as a molecular geneticist. I'm aware that we have many fertility clinics within the state of Florida, and the process of in vitro fertilization generally generates many more viable embryos than what are capable of being implanted. These viable embryos are typically frozen in liquid nitrogen, and they remain viable for years and, based on animal studies, most likely for decades. I couple that with the idea that I have read a lot on some local forums about legislating a much earlier time frame for limiting abortions and possibly declaring the beginning of life at conception. Given those two pieces of information when combined, what would you propose? Should we have a definition of life at the beginning of life at conception? What would you propose be done with those unused embryos?
A great question that we're not going to be able to solve in the time limits of a discussion at Manatee Tiger Bay. I mean, it just artificial insemination and the creation of these embryos by themselves is a bioethical quandary that we're now creating. We are human beings playing God. And I think that, the questions you raise simply point out those problems. But it doesn't change the fact of when life begins. It just doesn't. We always have to go back to that. And it's an interesting issue, just like when, and it can be misleading and lead us down this rabbit hole that distracts from what we're here to talk about. Just like, referring to victims of crime, a heinous situation. If you're the victim of rape or incest and the baby that's created. But we have to remember in all circumstances that we're here to talk about whether or not a baby was created and whether or not another human being ought to be able to have the right to terminate that life. And so whether the issue is complex or whether the issue is emotional or driven by a horrific situation doesn't change what the underlying focus should be, and that is on the baby. And again, we're talking now we're really talking about small numbers and scientific dilemma or issues created through the dilemmas and advancement or debatable advancement of science. But what we know on the ground, again, is that 75% of abortions in Florida and around this country are just completely elective. It has nothing to do with crime, has nothing to do with the creation of embryos and trying to help women that are struggling to get pregnant. 75% elective. 20% of women say they choose an abortion for a socioeconomic reason. So there's the first 95% of abortions. The next 4.8% are because of health reasons, which, by the way, again, those exceptions have existed in Florida law for quite some time and were not changed by the law last year. And then you have that just less than 0.2% of babies that were aborted because they were the result of a crime. No matter what the question is, we have to return to the issue, and that is whether or not it is a human being, and if it is a human being, whether or not another human being ought to be able to terminate their life.
Anyone on the panel wants to add a comment before I move on?
I always feel like you can't hear me. I will say, I mean, I'm not that well versed, honestly, in the embryo and what she was saying. I don't know. But just to be frank, but I do feel like what he said, that we have to stay focused on just the baby being, whether it's a person or not, is kind of incorrect, because a baby, whether we choose to keep the child or not, can't take care of itself. So when we talk about issues as far as crimes that happen, like if she's a rape victim, or if there's some health issue that caused her to want to terminate the pregnancy, these things are all interlocking. They're all the same. You can't discuss a life without talking about the carrier of the life. So I want to kind of plant that seed, because that we are talking about more than just the child. We're talking about the parent, the mother, the person that's carrying, the circumstances. But that's all I have for that.
Next question, please.
I wanted to answer that. I'm sorry. It's okay. I am very pro IVF. If I ever decide to, or very pro surrogate mother. I'm pro, if you want to have a baby, you should be able to. I also believe that adoption should be lower. With that being said, I do not think that if someone has an embryo and it's sitting there and it's a fetal, they're sitting there in a chamber somewhere, they should be forced before that embryo disposes, they should be laid on the bed in the hospital and be forced to be impregnated. That's someone's body, my choice. And as far as the law has changed, that is a misconception. There are 2 doctors. You need 2 opinions. Now, if you're on Medicaid or you're on health insurance, and your health insurance doesn't cover it, that means you have to pay out of your pocket. The law has changed. Thank you.
Next question, please. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for being here. My name is Tracy Lipton, and I have a question for each Tommy Gregory and Johnny Christ. Mr. Gregory, you've spoken a lot about the children, about the babies, about their life. You spoke about statistics, and I have a statistic for you that is geared directly towards children, and that statistic is...
Ms. Lipton, do you have a question?
Yes.
You want to put it in a form of question
Yes.
for me, please? Thank you so much.
How do you feel about this statistic, Mr. Gregory? Firearms recently became the #1 cause of death of children in the United States, surpassing motor vehicle deaths and those caused by other injuries. What do you plan to do to help those children that have been born and are affected by this?
So I'm trying to understand the premise of your question. What is it that you're arguing?
I have a lot to argue, but I'm asking you since you are so pro-life and so pro-children's life, what do you plan to do for the children that will be born now, where firearms will be the #1 cause of their death? How do you feel about that? What do you plan on doing about it?
Well, firstly, again, I disagree with the premise of the question. Firearms are not the #1 leading cause of death. They're not even in the top 10, right? You look at the leading causes of death in this country.
Children.
Abortion is
children.
#1. Abortion is #1 at 1 million, right? 1 million babies a year are killed in this country through abortion.
But will you answer
After
my
that,
question?
Let
I'm
him
going to
answer
answer
the
it for you.
question. Guys, we're going to
what
be
the-
respectful
what the
with
government-
questions, okay? Thanks so much.
What the government can do, and what the government does, is make illegal the taking of life. It is illegal to murder somebody, whether you do it with a car, a knife, a gun, or any other instrument, or your hands. It is absolutely prohibited. It doesn't change the reality that there are some evil people in the world that are going to do it.
Okay, and for Mr. Christ, I'm curious why, in the scenario you made up about the one incident with the woman, that she had to have one too many. What about, my question is, what about the women who have spoken out about sexual assault, but people scream about it that they are liars and sluts and whores, and discourages them from going forward to the authorities, which is something that you mentioned, that they all need to go to authorities. But a large percentage of women are discouraged by that because of how they are portrayed by...
Ms. Lipton, I
yes.
need you to get to the question. I'm not trying to interrupt
No,
you.
I
just need
understand.
the question, please. Thank you.
I understand. So in order to make it safer for women to go to authorities when they have been raped and impregnated by a rapist, how do you think that it could, we could make them safer and more comfortable for them to go get that help from authorities?
Wake up in 2022. Simple as that. This is not the 1980s. This is not the 1960s, 70s, or even 90s. Nobody's a slut. Nobody's a whore. None of that. None of that's going on. People are more able to come out freely and speak, and everybody giving me the weird look. Until there's an actual statistic placed in front of me, I'm giving my opinion the same as you give yours. But to argue that it's 100% my choice, don't you think that would also take a current crime and throw it out the window? Because if a woman can wait all the way on up until the day it's born for it to be deemed a human life, the only way human life is real is if it's born, then what happens to the abusive boyfriend who pushes this lady down the stairs and the baby gets killed? Well, guess what? If it's not a human life, you can't very well charge it with murder now, can you? That's currently on the books. So that's a little something to think about. And hopefully your friends are the same as my friends, and they have a great support system, and they're backing them every step of the way. If anybody doesn't have a good support system, my advice is simple. Get a better support system.
That's the answer. Okay.
Next question, please. Please try not to, I need to move with the question, so when you ask your question, please, we'll have, let us know who it's for on the panel, and then go ahead and remove, and then the next person, please come up with this question. Go ahead.
Hello, I'm Corey Carter. I'm a Tiger Bay member. And just to be brief, I'm the oldest of 5. My mom, she was single, most of the time of me growing up. And so a lot of the decisions I made in life, allowed me to be a first-time graduate, a business owner. It allowed me to be a now professor. And so the point I'm just making is I was able to break generational curses being born. My question is, my mom had me at 18, and so I know the part I played in the growing up of my siblings and what I was able to do, being able to have life.
So I'm sorry, guys.
So to get to the point,
question? I
the
need
question is, do I have a choice as a kid to make the choices that I did later on to be who I am today?
Anybody can answer it. Do you have a particular person?
For pro-choice, do I have a choice as a kid, being
Whether you
born,
want to be here or not.
whether I want to be here or not, to be able to be in the position I am today and affect my family and my siblings that were after me?
Do you all understand the question?
I get what he's asking.
I
So
need you guys to answer the question in about 30 seconds.
okay, so basically, what he's asking, I take from is, does he have a choice as a child, of whether or not he should be here, like present, correct? So we've met several different people that have had the same story and have been victims of rape or or even incest, or and they were a product of that, and some of them feel that they should not have been here, and they would rather not be here than their mothers going through or having to go through the constant trauma of a reminder of what happened to them. So, I mean, I guess it's based on the individual, but I am happy that you are here and that you are alive and you're, thriving. So kudos.
That is a great question. And I will say, as someone that has broken generational curses, as someone that came from trailer parks and now I'm a political consultant, I totally get what you're saying. That was my mother's choice, though. I didn't have a choice. You didn't have a choice. You have a choice to still be here. You have a choice to still be a good brother. You have a choice to still be a great black man, and that's amazing because you could commit suicide. You could make the choice to make crimes. So yes, every step of the way you've had a choice since you were born. But your mother had to make that choice, and she had to make the choice to make sure to raise you to be a good man.
Thank you so much. Next question.
Hi, my name's Lydia Belgian, and I'm a new member to the Tiger Bay Club.
Welcome.
This question is specifically for you gentlemen on this side of the table.
Let's make sure we got questions, please.
Yes.
I don't want to cut
Mr.
anyone
Gregory
off.
and Mr. Christ, I want to know if you understand what an amniocentesis is and at the time in a pregnancy when it happens for women.
Great question. I guess what you're driving at is whether or not women should be investigating through the use of medical science what problems they may be experiencing in utero.
So, for example, I have a genetic disorder to carry cystic fibrosis, and so does my husband. And so we saw a geneticist for 18 weeks with our first pregnancy. We were told that our fetus would be fine and he should be viable, but we were offered additional testing. If you don't know, at 18 to 20 weeks, if you take an amniocentesis, it can cause your body to go into miscarriage and you can have a late-term abortion. So when you make laws like that, you have to consider that there's people who are trying to plan out their lives and that is a very real situation that they do. So anyway.
I'll answer. Let me address.
Anyway, that was my question if you understood the science behind it.
I think he understood. Go ahead and answer the question.
I'll just address it this way. 2 points. The first one, as a father of 3 sons, my oldest of who is with us today, and my wife is here as well. I remember when we faced that question from the doctor each time. Do you want to do these tests? Do you want to know? And my wife's immediate answer was no. Because I know that your next question, doctor, is going to be, do I want to terminate this baby in utero if they are likely to have one of these problems? Now, that's a difficult question, to be sure, for mothers and fathers soon to be. Do they want to take the test? Do they want to know? Which leads me to my second point. The question is, after birth of the baby, if they have problems, whatever they may be, I don't think anybody in this room or in this country, I hope not, God forbid, would believe that as a society it should be appropriate to terminate the life of that child. And I see no difference before the birth.
Next question.
Awesome. My name is Katie Danahy-Sametz. I am Vice President, Founder, Women's Voice of Southwest Florida. The most brief preface to my question is that something I keep hearing in this debate is when life starts, the start of life. Life starts at conception.
What's the question?
The question is, half a sentence to preface that as well, I'm sorry. That's a majorly Christian value and view, is that life starts at conception. In the Jewish faith, it starts at first breath. So as a legislator, how exactly do you justify and juggle and write in your mind the fact that this legislation that you pushed forward violates one of the most fundamental American rights and principles and the reason this country was founded, which is freedom of religion?
Thank you for your question. Go ahead.
I don't believe that it does at all. And the fact that my Jewish colleague and friends voted for this in the Florida House demonstrates that they don't believe it violates their religion. You know, we can agree or disagree as a matter of faith or personal belief on when life begins, but I think it's fascinating that the pro-choice argument has now moved away from the science. As you may recall, the science is what they kept beating the drum about in Roe v. Wade. The science over whether it's a life and whether or not the unborn baby is viable. But now the science has caught up. So you see the pro-choice crowd now moving away from the science and trying to argue that the pro-life crowd that is relying on the science is doing it for some unenforceable reason. It's simply not true. The science confirms. Now, for many people, faith is in agreement that life begins at conception. But that is not the basis for the law. The basis for the law is whether it is a human being. So yes, we can argue about whether you're a human being at taking your first breath or at conception, and I'm going to disagree with you. I believe it is at conception. But those are good policy discussions and policy debates that, as I said, my Jewish colleagues and friends made the choice that 15 weeks was the appropriate landing spot last year in Florida.
Next question.
Hi, I'm Shannon Keever. I'm a board-certified pediatric nurse in this community. I have experience in maternity and pediatric health. Question for you, Representative Gregory, about your 15-week appropriateness for this law. As far as fetal anomalies, and I've cared for a lot, I've seen this enough to have changed my views on pro-life versus pro-choice. There is a point where you don't get the fetal anomaly scan, I'm sure you're familiar with that, if you have children, until at a very minimum 17 weeks of pregnancy. Usually it's between 17 and 20 weeks when you go for that detailed scan, and that's when you find, a lot of parents find out at that point that their fetus is incompatible with life, and continuing the pregnancy is dangerous at that point. Not just to the mother, but it's a heartbreaking, horrible thing. How did you come up with 15 weeks as the appropriate time when the pregnant person isn't going to even have all the information they need until at a minimum 17 weeks, but even then there's usually second opinions and stuff, so it takes weeks even after that sometimes before they even really know what they're working with here.
Is that your question?
Yeah, that's my question. How did you come up with the 15 weeks?
Go ahead, Mr. Gregory. I'm trying to make sure all the questions get in.
It's really a long answer. How did we in Florida, in the legislature, through debate and discussion and committee hearings, how did we end at 15 weeks? I mean, a lot went into that. I will tell you, I mean, you could look at the case law in Florida where they said the state can regulate after the first trimester in one of the precedent cases on abortion and pro-life, pro-choice debate. That was as a starting point. So after 12 weeks, we could have, according to our Supreme Court's precedent, prohibited abortions, right? So how do we land at 15 weeks? It was through a lot of thoughtful, difficult debate. As I said, and I think I've indicated clearly, but I'll say it again, for me, we could have gone earlier. And I think for about 50% of Americans, we could have gone as low as 6 weeks. But where we landed is a position that 70% of Floridians and 70% of Americans support.
Thank you so much. Next question.
Hi. I'll be brief. I have a quick question for Sarah and then another question for Representative Gregory. Sarah, do you think that, this is kind of a white male-dominated world. Do you think that a fetus has more rights than a woman because it still has a chance to be a male?
You know what?
Can you keep that to about 30 seconds?
Yes, ma'am. I ain't trying to have Xavier yell at me. She about killed everybody else out there. Listen. Everyone knows the answer I'm about to say to that. I'm trying to do this under 30 seconds. I'm sorry.
25 seconds.
Shit. I think that yes, but I think most of this is political posturing. Like he said, Representative Gregory said a minute ago, this is all about this. We all are all pro-life, right? We all are pro-life. I almost died with my daughter. My son came first, and he almost died. I spent 52 days in that NICU room. 52 days I did not leave. The nurses would beg me to leave. And I was like, I'm not leaving my baby. I have fought tooth and nail, and I even told my husband that I was like, if I get pregnant again, I'm gonna keep my baby. And he was like, it would kill you. Then what are we gonna do? You're the breadwinner, you're the mother, you're the one that's teaching your kids sign language. What are we gonna do? My life, every life is precious, and that includes the woman's. And we forget that. But if you watch the new Game of Thrones, I'm just saying, shout out Game of Thrones, you're gonna remember real quick that every life is precious, including women.
Yeah, she dies. Thank you so much for, sorry if I ruined it.
Oh,
Sorry, I'm sorry. Go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you.
Last question, please. Last question.
Mr. Gregory, before I ask this question, I want to give you a chance to clarify, or perhaps.
I need the question.
Yes,
right.
ma'am.
I'm out of time.
Well, he said before that the new law doesn't change anything with regard to a women's
So
right.
can you refrain on the
Can
question?
you please correct that? Or are you saying that we didn't limit to 15 weeks? We didn't limit and include the exceptions, exclude the exceptions for rape and incest? When you said that in your introductory speech, because I want to frame my question around whether or not you seem to understand the law that you wrote.
Well, I guarantee you I read the law and debated it much more intensely than you did. Yes, the exceptions that existed before in 24 weeks exist now at 15 weeks.
So those still do exist. Thank you very much. So my question is.
Oh, that wasn't your question.
Oh, no, my question was, go ahead, Sarah.
No, I'm going to let that be
here.
his question.
I need the question. I don't want to be rude. I don't like being rude.
No,
I just want you
no,
guys
and
to
I don't
answer
think
the
you are, and
question.
I'm sorry if I was
No,
being
you're okay.
confusing.
I'm doing good on time, so let's go.
There you go. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to let these ladies go.
No.
Okay, go ahead. These gentlemen
No,
seem
go
kind of
ahead.
anxious.
You're already to the microphone. You're fine. Go ahead
Okay.
and ask your question.
You said when you just answered someone else's question that it was your opinion about when life begins. Earlier, you said it was a fact. As a person that's not a doctor, and there's a lot of debate about this, and I think that would you support a state constitutional amendment to actually have real democracy and let the voters decide this issue?
I think direct democracy is not the country that we live in. We are a representative democracy. That's our founding principle, Mike. I do not
No, we're
believe.
not debating.
I
would like him to answer your question.
But he's telling an untruth. That's not
I
even
know,
true.
but you asked the
Making
question,
a mealy
and
mouth.
I would like to answer the question.
Oh, we're not going to do that on my panel.
Okay.
Can you step
Please.
away from my
Yes, ma'am.
microphone? Are you finished answering the question? Next question, please. You have 30 seconds. You have 30 seconds. 30
All right,
seconds.
Yes, 30 seconds. I would like to say that the bill has actually changed. There's no thing for rape, incest, or human trafficking. And with what he just said and just asked, that I hope that you do believe in that, because that is going to be Women's Voice's next step, is to get it on the ballot, because the Floridians need to decide.
Thank you. Next.
Microphones? We don't need no stinking microphones. But we're going
Ask
to
your
use
question.
one anyway. The question that I have has to do with, as a practical matter, what is happening in this country with regard to abortion. As a physician, I decided that I wanted to get some practical facts, so I did some research. And I found out many things that surprised me. But the one thing that I'm going to mention right now is this. Half of the abortions in this country are not performed as a medical procedure. They are performed by taking 2 pills. That cat is out of the bag. It's not ever going to go back into the bag. So mail order or whatever, the possibility of inducing an abortion by taking 2 pills is available to every woman in this country. And so,
Do you have a question?
So the question is, how does that relate to, I mean, there are 2
I
things
need the
going on.
question. I
The
need
only
the question.
thing, Senator Gregory, or Assemblyman Gregory,
Not yet.
soon, is how do these regulations apply to abortion not as a medical procedure, and what do you think the prognosis is for that, for how that's going to work in the long run?
Thank you for your question, Mr. Gregory.
Well, it's interesting. I think we alluded to this a little bit earlier, although a little indirectly, and that is that there are horrific multiple ways to kill somebody. And you're right, tragically, science has found a way to kill babies through the use of pills. And so I think as a society, it doesn't change the question and the policy underlying it. The question is it a life, and should you have the ability to kill unborn life? It doesn't matter if the instrument is a blunt force object or a surgical tool or a pill.
This probably can go on for another 2 hours. But I'm so excited and proud of everyone on this panel. Thank you, Johnny Chris. Thank you, Representative Tommy Gregory. Thank you, Elena Martinez. And thank you, Sarah Parker. Please give our panelists a round of applause. Yes, I will. 15 seconds. Go, Sarah. Close it out. Oh, Tommy wants, go ahead, Tommy, we'll start with this one.
I'll go
15
first
seconds.
since I suggested it. I just want to thank everybody for their good, difficult questions, and really thank the panel members for their thoughtful debate and appropriate tone, and especially when you share personal stories. A lot of respect from me to you for sharing your stories and presenting your case today.
Johnny, 15 seconds.
Yeah, thank you very much for everybody. The one thing that I always take away is, if you cannot tell me that I'm wrong, then I am not your equal. And if I cannot tell you you are wrong, then you must not be mine.
Oh, that was his 15 seconds. Sarah, Sarah?
I want to say that abortion is going to happen no matter what. And I believe that if you are pro-life, then you have to be pro-choice. Because I could die, your neighbor could die, your kids could die. And also, furthermore, it is not anyone's damn business if you have an abortion. It is only your medical provider, your God, and your family. And like I was told by my great-grandmother all the time, honey, your sins are your own. So when I go up there, I will see my God, and if I do have an abortion for whatever reason, that will be between me and him, and on my knees when I pray at night. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Elena?
Well, I definitely appreciate being here today, but I do think that it's very important that everyone, although we're talking about these issues, I think it's really important to be sensitive to the woman who has to make this choice or not make the choice, and to also offer these women support when and how they make their decision. It's not an easy decision to have an abortion, or to decide to still keep a child that you know is not going to be in a healthy environment. And although there are different programs and different, like even welfare that can help in some way towards children, it's not enough. It's not enough. There's no dollar amount that you can put that could have told me that my child, needs all this medical help and attention. There's no dollar amount. It's not, the system is not made to cater per person to your situation. So I think it's really important, like I said, to focus on being sensitive to the woman, the person that's actually going to be bearing the burden, regardless if that's to keep the child or to not keep the child. Thank you.
Thank you all for attending the luncheon today. Thanks to all of our speakers for being here. Also, thank you to our board and our committee. Our next luncheon is September 22nd. We will have our Bradenton City Council candidates debate. Will be here. We invite you to become a corporate nonprofit individual member. Some of you have became members. Don't just become members on your one subject. Become members and support Tiger Bay and be a part of the board and suggest any type of panel. We will look over it, and if we can get the people on the panel, we want to make sure we can bring that to you. If you are interested in submitting topics, you can go to admin@Manatee Tiger Bay. Thank you to Charles Clapsaddle and METV crew for taping and broadcasting. Also, ABC7 was here. And, Kevin Wright is just starting to be here as a broadcaster, too. So thank you to Kevin Wright. Thank you all for coming out today. Please have a wonderful day. I'm Xavier Bailey, your president.